Ungrateful. We took you in, my mother-in-law screamed, her voice cracking so loudly the neighbor's dog started barking through the wall. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because for a second I genuinely thought I'd misheard her. We were standing in my living room. My couch. My curtains. My mortgage. My name is Lena Morris, and in that moment, something inside me finally snapped, quietly, cleanly, like a thread pulled too tight for too long. My mother-in-law, Valentina, was red in the face, one hand pressed dramatically to her chest, the other pointing at me like I was a stranger who'd overstayed her welcome. My husband, Eric, stood behind her near the kitchen doorway, saying nothing.
He always did that. Watched.
Waited. Let other people fight for him. What do you mean you won't give it to us? Valentina yelled. That money belongs to the family. The money. The money I earned from selling my late mother's dacha. The last thing she ever left me. A small, weathered house with peeling blue paint and apple trees that still smelled like her shampoo in the summer. I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. How exactly did you take me in? I asked slowly. When this apartment is in my name? Silence.
Thick.
Heavy. Valentina scoffed. Details, she snapped. A wife shares. A good wife doesn't argue. I looked at Eric then. Really looked at him. His jaw was clenched. His eyes avoided mine. And that's when I said it. Something small. Quiet. About Valentina's past. About the apartment she'd lost years ago. And why. Eric went pale. Not shocked. Terrified. Because he knew exactly what I was about to do next. The next morning, Eric acted like nothing had happened. He drank coffee, scrolled his phone, kissed my cheek like we were still fine. That hurt more than the shouting. I asked him quietly, "Do you really think your mother took me in?" He didn't answer right away. That pause told me everything. She didn't mean it like that, he said finally. You know how she talks.
No.
I knew how he hid. The pressure started showing in small ways. Valentina stopped asking and started assuming. My card left on the counter. Bills discussed without me. My name used as leverage. Lena will handle it. One afternoon, I came home to find Valentina on the phone, whispering urgently. When she saw me, she hung up too fast. That night, I checked our shared folder. Bank statements. Emails. Messages I wasn't supposed to see. They weren't asking for my money anymore. They were already planning what to do with it. And the worst part? Eric was listed first. The humiliation didn't come quietly. It came at a family dinner I hadn't even known I was hosting. I walked in from work to find Valentina at the head of my table, serving food from my own pots, explaining my finances to her sister like a case study. Papers were spread out, printed, highlighted. Our lawyer says it's marital money now, Valentina announced when she saw me. No shame. No hesitation. So Lena can't just decide on her own. I felt heat rush to my face. What lawyer? I asked. Eric stood up too fast. It's not like that. But the sister looked at me with pity. The worst kind. So you're selling property and hiding money, she said softly. That was the moment. Not the yelling. Not the entitlement. The public rewriting of who I was. I realized then this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a strategy. And I was the last one in the room to know. I excused myself politely. And in the bathroom mirror, I finally stopped shaking. I didn't cry. That surprised me. I sat on the edge of the tub and breathed until the buzzing in my ear settled. Pain passed quickly. Clarity didn't. They thought I was emotional, reactive, easy to corner. That had always been their mistake. That night, after everyone left, I opened my laptop and went through everything: deeds, timelines, bank trails. My name. My mother's name. Dates that didn't lie even when people did. The apartment had never been joint property. The dacha money had never touched our shared account. I remembered something Valentina had said years ago, half drunk, half proud, about why she lost her own apartment. A signature she shouldn't have trusted. A document she didn't read. I smiled for the first time in days. Revenge didn't feel loud. It felt organized. Eric slept beside me, breathing evenly, convinced I'd fold like always. I reached for my phone and booked a consultation. Not with a lawyer they knew, with one who specialized in endings. The lawyer's office smelled like paper and lemon cleaner.
Calm.
Neutral. The kind of place where emotions went to be translated into facts. I laid everything out. The apartment deed. The sale contract for my mother's dacha. Bank records showing where the money had not gone. I watched the lawyer's eyebrows lift, just slightly, when I mentioned Valentina's past, the apartment she'd lost, the signature she'd regretted. She knows exactly what she's doing, the lawyer said. Not accusing. Observing. I nodded. So do I. We moved carefully. No confrontations. No warnings. First, I separated finances quietly, legally. Then, I changed access permissions to documents Eric assumed were shared. I didn't touch his accounts. I didn't need to. The real moment came a week later, when Valentina called a family meeting. Same living room. Same table. She smiled like someone who already thought she'd won. The lawyer joined us on speaker. Valentina started confidently, talking about fairness, marriage, obligation. Then the lawyer spoke.
Slow. Precise.
Explained that the apartment was solely mine, that the dacha proceeds were protected assets, that any attempt to claim them could reopen questions about previous property transfers. Valentina's smile froze. Eric looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. And I stayed calm because power feels different when it's finally back where it belongs. Valentina didn't explode. She collapsed inward. Her hands trembled as she gathered the papers she'd brought, suddenly unsure what they were worth. Eric kept opening his mouth like he wanted to speak, then closing it again, trapped between his mother and the reality he'd ignored. You planned this, he said finally, not angry, wounded. I met his eyes. I protected myself. That answer ended us more cleanly than any fight ever had. Valentina tried one last angle.
Tears.
Regret. We're family, she whispered, reaching for my arm. I stepped back. The lawyer didn't need to say anything else. The silence did the work. Valentina understood what silence meant. She'd lived with consequences before. She recognized the sound of a door closing, not slammed, just locked. After they left, the apartment felt different. Larger. Quieter. Mine again. Eric texted that night. Apologies layered with excuses. Pressure disguised as love. I didn't reply. The next week, I filed for separation. Not dramatically. Efficiently. The same way I'd done everything else once I stopped hoping someone else would choose me. Valentina stopped calling. She knew better now. And Eric? He learned something late in life. You can stand behind people for years, but eventually you have to stand alone. I slept better than I had in months, because the fear was gone, and what replaced it felt like peace. The final twist didn't come from a courtroom or a confrontation. It came quietly, the way real endings usually do. 3 months after the separation papers were signed, I received a registered letter. Valentina's handwriting. Careful. Controlled. Nothing like the woman who'd once screamed in my living room. She was withdrawing every claim. Not just against the dacha money, against everything. No appeals. No conditions. At the bottom, one sentence stood out. I understand now why I lost my first apartment. I thought control was security. I folded the letter and set it aside. Not satisfied. Not angry. Just done. Eric tried once more. He showed up unannounced, thinner, uncertain, holding memories like bargaining chips. He talked about therapy, about regret, about how scared he'd been to stand up to his mother. I listened. I really did. Then I said, "You didn't lose me because you were scared. You lost me because you let fear make decisions for you." That was the last conversation we ever had. I didn't keep the money untouched. I used part of it to renovate the apartment. New windows, light-colored walls, space where shadows used to live. I planted an apple tree on the balcony, in a large clay pot, just to see if it would grow. It did. Sometimes I think about that word, ungrateful. How easily it's thrown at women who finally stop giving. I am grateful. Grateful I paid attention. Grateful I chose myself before I disappeared completely. And grateful that when they said they took me in, I remembered exactly who owned the door.